Enterprise Project, Enterprise Computing HSC Course Unit 4. So this is the final unit of the actual HSC course for Enterprise Computing. Now, it mightn't mean that you've actually done it at the end of the course. Some schools might be doing it at the beginning of their course because it is very much foundational skills for developing projects within this subject area. And as you will see, all the kind of subunit names all align with different stages of project management in developing an enterprise project. So we'll have a look at that today and look at affiliated terms, which all relate to tools and skills that are required as a part of project management. So we'll start off with the first area of identifying and defining. And here we're taking a look at tools, processes, and documentation that relate to developing an enterprise project, and specifically at that initial stage of what is the problem, and then that first level of trying to understand, well, how can we navigate this problem and what opportunities are there? So we use skills such as a problem definition to define the problem. We have to time manage, and when we time manage, we usually develop a Gantt chart to plan out our time over a specific time period. What is very common these days is the use of an iterative approach where we work in cycles and we kind of get out a model of a system first, but we're very flexible, we communicate, and we constantly update that system in response to feedback. So through using an ongoing cycle that is focused on an actual project, and interacting with our client and our peers, okay, we can develop a system rather quickly and then continue to update it in order to perfect what they want from us. So that's a very modern approach to system development and obviously available because of its flexibility and then the technology we have these days. With that as well, there's a whole other range of production processes and technical skills that actually go into developing a project too. The production processes relate to how we physically make the actual project itself, and then the technical skills that we want to have in project teams in order to actually make these things happen. And then also ideas about this stage is, well, if we're using this iterative approach that is ongoing, how are we actually testing and evaluating and getting that ongoing feedback to support the actual system we are developing there? So that's just that first point of identifying, defining. Then we also look at how the actual enterprise has changed in this modern age, okay? And essentially over the past few years, many things have changed due to lifestyle circumstances and the availability of technology. They've created new opportunities for interacting with enterprises. So the first one is offshore development. We could essentially be sending work overseas in order to be completed, okay, because it might be more efficient or there might be more resources available offshore for that work to be done. Okay, now we say offshore to other countries, but it could just be interstate as well, but essentially away from the company. We're outsourcing it somewhere else for development to take place. Stemming from that as well is the workers not being on site at the workplace through remote working. Through tools such as video conferencing and online platforms and cloud storage, people can interact with their workplace through their desktop computers or laptop computers at home and interact with those online servers and have meetings via video conferencing in order to still complete work without even leaving their homes, which is extremely efficient and obviously supports the work-life balance of individuals with other responsibilities they have in their life. We have freelance work as well, where we can hire workers who are not a part of our actual company. And these outsourced workers could be doing jobs for multiple enterprises, okay, as a freelancer, and we're hiring them to complete specific tasks there, which obviously gives much more power to skilled individuals who are experts in a specific area and they can support many companies with their skill as well as scale their flexibility of how many jobs they are doing at a time. And then the final point is enabling the growth of startup companies, those new businesses that are doing exciting new things or developing new projects that haven't been done before, often getting sponsored by larger enterprises and working in collaboration with them, adopting things such as how to manage their own finances and skills and build connections within the community, but them supplying their own skill set in this new area to the larger enterprise as well, allowing new companies to grow under the mentorship of established enterprises. The next area we'll look at then is researching and planning. At this point now, we kind of have an idea of what we want to develop. Now we've got to kind of start designing it and actually making up what it's actually going to look like. So we wouldn't have one idea, we'd probably have multiple ideas. Okay, trying to figure out at this stage which is the best idea we can use in order to solve the problem that we kind of established in the identifying and defining stage. So the first area is just relating to tools that can support this. So in this area, we'll look at things such as online collaboration, as mentioned before, with the working remotely. Many tools available in this area now, the video conferencing, the cloud storage, the online platforms, all of that can allow for online support. The second area then is then of time and task action plans. So here we'd actually put our Gantt chart in place. Go, this is our time frame for how we're going to work here, and then we might start aligning tasks to different workers in our project team in what everyone's going to do in order to contribute to our developing enterprise project. The third stage is a process diary, and this might be something every team member has, or potentially just the project manager themselves. But essentially, in their process diary, they are documenting the work as it is being done. Okay, what interviews have taken place and what data have we gathered? What work have we done on a specific date? Did we go and view some actual systems functioning and conduct our own research? We write this all down in our process diary, we date it, and then it becomes a bit of a map of our ideas. Okay, and we can actually track what decisions led to us thinking and going with specific designs we're doing as a part of our enterprise project. As with any project, there is a budget, so we have to balance our finances. Our costs that are going into it, we'd have a fixed budget at the beginning, $30,000, $50,000, and then we've got to allocate that amongst resources that could be the actual technology we need to build the project, the staff we have on team and paying their wages, other people we might need to contract in as outsourcers and freelancers in order to train specific people. All of that needs to be factored in the budget right from the beginning, because something that can absolutely murder an actual project is if you go over budget. Then we start to have problems. And then we have our diagrams that can support mapping out our different ideas at these stages. So these include system flowcharts, which are made up of many symbols that show different parts of a system and how its inputs go in, where processes take place, where there's telecommunication links, when we have printouts from the system, storage in specific servers. It's got many symbols within it, probably the most of any diagrams that we look at in this actual course. And you need to know those different symbols as a part of that diagram. We have data flow diagrams, which are a lot more simpler in relation to symbols. We only have four actual types of symbols in those diagrams: an external entity that exists outside a system, a circle that represents a process of the system, a flow line showing the movement of data, and then a three-sided rectangle that represents a data storage location. And then our final actual diagram here is that of a decision tree, where we can map out different outcomes in relation to different actions that show the logic of where these pathways will take us, a specific combination of decisions leading to a specific action taking place by the system. So there are a variety of tools that support the research and planning of our actual project, allowing us to visualize our different ideas at this point. Then we've got the ideas of different ways we can think, and specifically aligning with how a computer thinks, okay, and a logical structured approach that supports developing a solution. So we're talking here about computational thinking, design thinking, and system thinking. So all of them very much affiliated with the logic of how computers think, okay, and following a very structured approach in solving a problem. Because if we can do it mentally in our own heads, hopefully we can translate that across to the system we're developing our project with, which will hopefully then solve the problem efficiently, because we can put in our problem and solve it in a series of steps that a computer could understand. Okay, and we're translating our logic, but we have to, in this initial stage, think like a computer. And then we've got collaborating and managing criteria. And so here we're trying to think about ways that the system will support these areas in the area of collaboration and managing. So we're designing our system not just so that it solves a problem, but also the ease of use of the people who are going to be using the system. And here we're starting to now correlate with user experience. We might do this with clarifying the specific informatics that make up the system. So what information is going to be given? What data does it need to produce that information? We need to find out at its core what is the necessary data and information that is going to be the foundation of the processing of the system we're creating. We need to specifically state what are the roles of participants, people who will be working with this system and are essentially going to be a part of this system, the human element that make up that system. What is their role as a participant in the system's processes? How does data take place in the system, how will it be collected by the system, how does it get processed, and how will it be outputted as information back to users of the system in an efficient way that will solve their problems. And then what components are used as a part of the system. Is it just going to be a keyboard, mouse, and monitor, or is it going to use more modern components? Is it going to use things that have sensors that can allow for automation to take place? Is it going to take in movement data from a user and allow them to interact? We are at the age of VR. There's new inputs now that track users' eyes and looks at where they're looking and uses that as an input mechanism. So there's a whole variety of components that could be used in order to make up a system. Then we've got to obviously talk to our clients as well, okay, and negotiate what do they actually need as a part of the system and what do they want as a part of the system. And this all relates to how feasible it is to develop these things. Needs correlate with what the system must have in order to work effectively. A want is something the system could have that could improve it and make it a better user experience, but is not necessarily detrimental to being a part of the system. So that's the difference between needs and wants. And then finally, we want embedded in the system tools for working collaboratively, because that is how the modern enterprise workplace works. There needs to be collaboration tools that allow people to work together on online documents and communicate with each other and add input to work, whether they're all together in the same workplace or working in different corners of the world. Collaboration tools are almost a necessity for any workplace today to allow for efficient work. We'll now jump over to the producing and implementing stage. So as these names suggest, we're building the system now. We're actually making it now. We're not just planning it out like in the previous stage. We're building it up, and then in implementing it, we're putting it into the workplace we're developing for. So firstly, it's tools to inform about requirements and limitations. So we are actually going to communicate with the clients and try to really specify what do we need to do to make the system suit their specific scenario and what is the most effective way to bring the system into their workplace. So here we're looking at a lot of data collection tools. So interviews where we actually are sitting down and talking with people and taking notes using a variety of questioning techniques to extract information. Open-ended questions, closed-ended questions, probing style questions in order to gather data through conversations. That is a way of doing it through face-to-face conversations, but then we can also using paper-based and online techniques through surveys where we make questionnaires that could still incorporate open-ended and closed style responses, but we can make use of tools like drop-down menus and check boxes and open-ended text boxes for people to put in their views about the system and also provide constructive feedback as well that we can use to guide our thinking and modify our ideas. When we have this data, we then can put together analytical reports. We can use this to create graphs and then write about the data we're seeing in these graphical summaries to then make actual assumptions about what we believe is wanted about the system, data informed decisions that we are basing on these actual analytical information that we've picked up from our data collection at this stage. Here we could start developing prototypes, and that is obviously a necessity at the producing stage. What will this system now look like? We actually start building a working model of the system, and through being a prototype, we can have our clients use the prototype. They can get a feel for how the system is going to work, but once again, give their feedback through interviews, through surveys, and then we can respond to that feedback and then update the prototype and then create a new version of that prototype. And then that takes us back to, in the first area, that idea of an iterative approach to developing a system. We keep creating new iterations of the prototype until our users are ultimately satisfied and we have a final version of what this system could look like. With all this data then, we want to then present our final research results, okay, and show the stakeholders, these are the decisions we're making, this is our justification of why we're doing it this way, and hopefully they will understand and be very enthusiastic about the design we've created. We then have our different development approaches for creating a system. Okay, and we've got 5 different types here. We've got the waterfall or structured approach, which follows a series of distinct steps. The actual names of those steps are the actual subpoints in this unit: identifying, defining, researching and planning, producing and implementing, and then what's coming up next, testing and evaluating. So it follows through those steps in sequence, and we've got to do them in that order, and hence why it's so structured. This is in contrast to the agile approach to system development, where it is much more flexible, makes use of an iterative approach, and we are developing the system in parts and delivering it as updates to our end users, to our clients, so they initially get something that's very quick. They can give us feedback. We can respond, we can be flexible, we can adapt, and then continually modify the project until it is perfected. This correlates with the prototyping approach, as I just mentioned as well, with what prototyping is, the development of a system model that is constantly updated and modified in relation to user feedback. When users are a major part of the development process, that is considered end user development, when they are almost part of the project team themselves, continually giving their input and having a deep say into what they want the final solution to look like. And then a key part of this, and it's kind of come up a few times in relation to freelance work, okay, and sending work away from our actual project team, is that of outsourcing. When we contract third parties to complete a part of system development, because it might be more financially viable, or they have better skills and resources at their company to support the development in that area. And that's not just in the area of computing project development, but also in building and in engineering. We contract outsources to complete parts of a project where they are specialized. And then the final level here is that of the development of an implementation plan, how we will bring the system into this workplace. So we've got to think about it, use design and thinking skills as well as tools to kind of have a good idea about how we're going to do this and how the system will be effectively produced and implemented. We need to conduct a risk analysis for the specific system going to a specific workplace. And even with our idea, is it feasible? Will it cost too much? Will the project run over time? Will people be able to actually use the system, or does the workplace have the technology? So that relates to skills such as conducting feasibility studies to establish this and kind of finalize, yes, we have the right idea here. We've got to think about how the technology will be integrated into the workplace, because we're not just developing the software for the workplace that's going to run on their existing systems. That could be a way we could do it, but in many ways, it could be that we're completely changing the whole infrastructure of the workplace, setting up an entirely new network that makes use of a lot more wireless communications and has nodes on the network that we interact with in different ways. So we do have to look at how the existing technology, will it be compatible with new technology? Does it need a complete overhaul, and how that will impact on its funds? If it is a completely new system, we then got to think of the people that are interacting with the system. Will they have the skills to use that new system? If not, we've got to implement a training plan that will support them with use of documentation that will be ongoing, and therefore their ongoing support in the use of this new project that we are developing. We then put the system into the workplace, and we've got to at this point have an idea, how are we going to test this system to ensure that it is effectively, which then, once we've got that plan in place, brings us to our final step of testing and evaluating. Does the system work? Does it satisfy the needs of our clients that they've hired us for? That is what we're going to make sure of at this stage. So here we need to verify and validate that the system is working effectively, correctively, and meeting the needs of our clients. So we need to get that test data, and there's a variety of test data we can use. Okay, we've got live data tests, we've got simulated data tests where we actually make up data and test it ourselves, which obviously is in contrast to live data where we're using real world data to test the system. But then we've also got different models of the system we could be using for testing, and it could be more ongoing depending on the project management approach we're using, because as says, those iterative approaches have ongoing testing and evaluation that has been going throughout the whole system. So there, they could be testing a beta version of the system throughout the whole process. Okay, and then we also have user acceptance testing, where that would be done at this final stage, where they kind of sign off, yep, the system is fine, we are happy with this final solution. So a whole variety of types of test data we can gather to support we've developed a project that satisfies the needs of users. Also alluded to in the previous stage too, the development of operational manuals that guide users on how to use the system. It's important we develop one and it is finalized at this stage, because we want to finish our project development and leave this project. But once we are gone, if there are problems with the system, we don't necessarily want our clients to contact us again. We can hope that their training in operation manuals, okay, and actual training itself in various aspects in how to use the system, that will be sufficient for them to guide themselves in how to solve problems with the systems. So we need to have help mechanisms such as a operations manual and trainings manuals and all other forms of documentation, as well as online help that they can refer to before they feel the need to contact us for help. Okay, after the development cycle has finished. All right, we want to move on to our next project and move on. We want them to be self-sufficient in managing and supporting and maintaining the system themselves. We can still be contactable for updates and all that, that's fine, but we really want them to be masters of the system and be able to solve their own problems. Okay, we want to look at the impact of the system implementation method that we've used. Okay, how did we actually bring the system into this workplace? What implementation method did we use? Did we just take the system and completely remove the old system and bring in the new system? Are we running the old and new system side by side in a parallel format? Has it been a phased introduction of the system? Or if it's a larger enterprise where they've got multiple sites, are they piloting the system at one site and evaluating it? And if successful, they might then spread it to the other areas of their larger enterprise and insert the new system there as well. So there's many different types of ways as well that we can implement an actual system, but obviously those different implementation methods all have their own impacts. Part of the evaluation process is getting ideas about how the system can be modified in order to improve its own function, whether it be in the design aspects or the behind the scenes functionality aspects, use of different technology that might make the system more powerful and run better. We want to know this at this evaluation stage too, so we can make our final improvements to optimize the system. And then finally have a plan, as said, to test the system, as I've already mentioned, to get a final evaluation from our clients, whether it be through interviews and surveys, as mentioned before, and then have a maintenance plan for the ongoing running of the system over the long term so that it is sustainable and continues to work and satisfies the company's needs in the realms of keeping employees up to date in how to use the system, sending out updates for the system, most likely online, in order to give bug fixes and updates in the areas of security and the technical aspects of the system as well being maintained. How often does a technician need to come out, review the technology, and ensure that it's working correctly? That plan also needs to be developed at this final stage once our project is completed. So I hope this video has given you an understanding of this enterprise project unit, essentially how it really correlates with that structured approach to system development with the four stages of identifying, defining, researching and planning, producing and implementing, and testing and evaluating, and then the tools and skills and procedures that are affiliated with these four stages. This may very well be the structure of your folio that you do as a part of your enterprise project, which you will create to support the project you develop. It will probably have those four main headings, and then you doing samples and addressing all these subpoints in those specific areas as a part of your final assignment, okay, in this course, which will be before your trial examinations happen right at the end of the year. So this will probably be your final take-home assessment task that correlates with this. So I hope this has helped you understand this and given you, confidence in this enterprise project unit.